Father had a stud. His first, when they started breeding, was about 1945.
Sure.
So it was my father and two brothers, and they bred under the same name. And of course, the others weren't as interested as my father, so my father took it on.
Well, as we've said on many occasions, we try and bring you these informative shows or these informative podcasts to let you know about what happens behind the scenes. And we've had over the years some very good guests and some very interesting guests, farriers, vets, owners, trainers, etc., breeders, and absolutely everybody, jockeys, absolutely everybody plays an important role in this massive mammoth industry that we all adore so much. And today we have Clifton Stud, Peter and Jenny Blyth in the hot seat in our podcast, in the box seat. So we welcome you all to another interesting show. And I will ask Peter to hold on for a moment before I introduce him officially, because I don't want you to get sulky if I don't come to you quickly with your funny hat. How's your funny hat?
Oh, my funny hat. That was Mike Maroney.
Yes.
I had to put it on.
Absolutely.
Just to show him that I appreciate it.
Because he does watch. I can't show him the whiskey he brought us because that's gone.
That's gone.
That's gone. You can't show him the whiskey. That's finished.
That was really nice whiskey. That
It certainly was.
I'll have to only wear it in the winter because it must be Irish, because it's bloody warm on top of my pip.
So that's Andrew Harrison is with us, barefoot and all. And as I said, Peter Blyth, the owner, alongside Jenny Blyth of Clifton Stud up in Rosetta in the Midlands. Pete, it's lovely to have you and Jenny here. We'll get her on a little bit later, but welcome, and how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Warren. Thank you for including me. I'm very honored to be here. I feel a bit out because I don't know if this is my game, but I'll give it a go.
Absolutely. Well, it's just an informal chat. We can imagine that we're sitting around the table at Clifton, around the fire with a nice glass of wine, and that's the chat we'll have around this table.
Okay, but where's the wine? We have
no, there's no wine. I think there's a bit of a fire, but there's fire but no wine.
All right.
But let's start off the discussion. And as I say, it's a podcast that we within reason we welcome anybody onto our podcast, and anyone who wants to chat to us about their racing story is most welcome to get a hold of us, and we'll certainly enjoy your company as well. But Pete, let us talk about how it all started for you, because, just correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't a breeder first, you were a trainer first, or did you breed, train, breed, or how did that system go?
No, listen, Warren, my father was always into horses, so from when I started, my father had a horse in some way. He used to have a trainer's license, which was in those days an owner trainer. He also raced a lot in the bush, because there was good, excellent bush racing, especially down in Swaziland, where this man came from. And I can remember those race meetings well as a little lighty, and of course he'd always train up a horse to take down there. And just to give you an example, at Carolina there was a strong race meeting held there always. The Pierces, Billy Pierce. Do you remember Billy Pierce?
Yes, I remember Billy Pierce.
He was a trainer here at Clearwood for many years. Actually, it's his son, Neville, was the trainer, I think. Billy was the father. They owned the garage in Carolina in those days, before they came training. And they organized this race meeting. They used to get the jockeys down from Joburg. They got things. So I grew up watching all this. And then, of course, my father was on our farm up there. We had a polo field. And, of course, I grew up playing polo. So that was... just by the way,
Yeah. Pete, that was all in Lothair.
Yeah.
Well, no, in
Lothair.
Mpumalanga or Eastern Transvaal.
Yeah, Lothair. It's about 60 k's east of Ermelo.
Ermelo, but it's a strange place to have horses and...
Listen, let me tell you something. In those days, they grew up on horses.
Yeah.
There was no transport. My father, I'm not talking about in my time, I'm talking about in his time. He used to go to school at St. Mark's in Swaziland. All his sisters, brothers went there. Then I ended up going there for 6 years. So, there were cars when I went, but in those days I used to ride to school. Ride back. Everyone was racy around the area, and knew horses backwards.
Yeah. It was also a big forestry area. I mean,
Very big, yeah.
Yeah, Jesse Vale and...
My father was sort of instigated forestry in that area. In fact, the Warburtons, that sawmill that you saw, that you know well, Andrew, my father started that sawmill.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was a sawmiller, really. And from Warburton, he moved into Lothair, because I think there's a railway station.
The railway station, yes. Yeah.
And so I grew up watching and looking on, and I saw, South African Racehorse magazine lying around. And I saw British Racehorse even British Racehorse magazine. So you page through this lot, and eventually you get hooked if it's in your blood.
Yeah. But you were a good polo player. I was checking up. I was doing a bit of research, and someone said you were better than the top South African polo players at the time. What was your handicap?
Well, at the time of, I had a bad fall when I was 21, so I was still a kid, and I went to boarding school.
Yeah.
So I could only play in the holidays. Whereas a mate of mine called Peter Blyth from the area too, he could play every weekend because he went to the local school. But of course we'd come back from school, and of course we were on the horses all the time. I ended up playing for about a 3 handicap at that stage. I played down here at Ottawa for a while too, which is just behind Umhlanga. And I played with GDR Armstrong. I don't know if you remember GDR. He was chairman of the Durban Turf Club. And then, of course, all those local sugar farmers there too.
Right,
In fact, at school, I was the only guy who had subscribed to the Rand Daily Mail.
Rand Daily Mail, I remember, yes.
And I'll tell you something, this thing would come every day in the post, but it was always a day late. But at least it's all right, you had yesterday's news today,
Pity they didn't give you yesterday's, you couldn't get the results, the other way around.
Now, I remember we used to get the Daily Mail also, and then I used to go through the things, and I'd do all my tips there, and then the next day we'd get the results.
Where was this at school then?
Yeah, when I was at school.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. And bloody, we got Mollet. Mollet was the...
Yeah, Dave Mollet.
Mollet was the tipster. Yeah, he was useless, he still is, yeah.
We all are, let me tell you. It's hard to tip 9 races. They say, you need to tip your 8 or 9 winners, but never on that you're tipping first place, second place, third place. I don't know anybody that's tipped first, second, third in 9 races in a row. If you can find me that person, let's do an interview with them. But just to Lothair, which we say was now in Mpumalanga, that's where Clifton Stud, the breeding operation, was originally started.
My father had a stud. His first, when they started breeding, was about 1945.
Sure.
So it was my father and 2 brothers, and they bred under the same name. And of course, the others weren't as interested as my father, so my father took it on. And he never sold horses commercially, but he would breed to race. And all the Kutsi family came from that area. I don't know if you know that. And, there were 5 brothers, these Kutsi. So my father must have been influenced by them too, because they were racing.
Sure.
And, Felix, the jockey today, the famous jockey, whose father was Henny, who trained right here at Sommerfeld. But in Joburg, there was JF. Remember JF?
Oh, that's JF Kutsi.
Yeah,
okay,
JF
right.
Kutsi,
They're all brothers.
Lukey Kutsi. Lukey was the jockey of the family.
I didn't realise
and
they were all
he was a
related.
very good jockey in his day, Lukey. So he was a brother to this lot. And then there was, hang on, there was JF, there was Lukey in Joburg. Then down in PE there was Felix, same name as the jockey. And one called Gert, the brothers, Gert Kutsi.
Sure.
So they were all brothers. And my father knew Lukey, the jockey, better than the others. And he always did a deal. I don't know what the arrangement was, but my father would send his horses up to Lukey. Lukey would train them. So they had quite a lot of winners, I'll tell you what. It was
hard going in those days, yeah. It was tough going in those days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pete, was it always Clifton Stud? When your dad had it, was it called Clifton Stud as well?
No, it wasn't. It was called the Old Manor Stud.
The Old Manor Stud,
yeah,
okay.
And I'll tell you why it was called the Old Man is because my father, they inherited a little bit of money from someone in the Old Manor Stud, which was part of somewhere in England, you know what I mean? And when I came along, I'll tell you what happened. I changed the name because the title deed of the farm was Clifton.
Okay.
So to me, it just made more sense. Old Manners was too English for me.
Yeah, but that whole area, I mean, Lothair and things, there was all Scottish names. It was Lothair and
Exactly,
Jesse Vale.
exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, at the turn of the century, they sent a whole lot of Scots out there for some reason. I think they're probably ganging them, but there's just something wrong in Scotland. And there were a lot of Scottish settlers there. So the area spoke a lot of English.
It was New Scotland, I think.
Yeah, it was called New Scotland. Our polo club was called New Scotland Polo Club.
Okay.
And so if I could tell you more about my polo,
Yeah, Pete, how did you get into training?
How did I get into training? Because my father trained. My father had owned a training license before, so I applied for a license, got it, and I started training from Lothair to race in Joburg. Helen, what was it?
Hell of a trick.
Yeah, what killed it was the travelling. I tried going up the day before. I tried going up the morning of. We'd get up. Jenny and I'd get up at 2 in the morning with an old Land Rover pulling a horse box, and we'd travel right past the Armitage's place. You know where the Armitages were? Right past their front door, up to Heidelberg, to the Vaal, or we'd go the other way.
Folkstress, they were at Folkstress or something.
Yeah, Folkstress was to the left, but anyway, we'd shiver ourselves to death because there were no heaters in those cars. We had blankets across our laps, and with the bloody Land Rover.
Jenny, you put up with us.
Jenny will have a segment just now, don't you worry.
Anyway, so we'd go up to the Vaal, and then we'd get there 7, 8 in the morning and give them a walk, and then let them have a rest, and then we'd race them that afternoon. But if you had a winner, you could go via Cape Town back home. But gee, it was a long way home when you didn't have a winner. But anyway, we tackled this bloody travelling thing so much so I took a caravan. My parents had a caravan. We camped at the Vereniging Caravan Park, which is on the Vaal River. Do you know that spot where the Meccano Bridge used to be a single bridge across to the Vaal Racecourse? Yeah. Just down on the left was the caravan park. And did you freeze there in the winter, you know what I mean? We'd get up, boy, so enthusiastically out to the Vaal, go and work with my horses and all the rest of it. Then we got to a stage where we took out a flat in Vereniging, in 3 Rivers. Jenny and I stayed in 3 Rivers for about a year, I suppose. And that was a bit smarter. And we had our successes. We had, we also had our viruses that affected us. And of course, I was dependent on stakes to keep going because I didn't have owners paying keep. I didn't have anybody else paying.
Well, you own a trainer.
Own a trainer, so I had to try and win races to to survive, to pay the stable rent as well. You know? But I think it was good for me to go there. I learned a hell of a lot, not from other trainers as well, because we had Gene Hemming there, and eventually Ormond Ferraris came down to the Vaal. Trevor Lang was there, James Goodman, Spike Larina, Russell Laird, which was
Charles's father.
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law,
yes. No, wait, Charles's father. Charles's father, quite right. Anyway, I mean, they were all super guys, and
So that's who you trained amongst. I mean, sure. That's
the legends of the game.
No, it was fantastic, and from that, I think I gained a lot of knowledge, and but my dilemma was eventually, there's this farm out at Lothair, beautiful farm, and I'm living here in Vereniging, going training. What do I do? Do I go farming or do I stay? So I eventually decided this is, and of course, who the boss. I think she was also lent a hell of a lot more towards going farming. So we went back farming.
And that's how obviously then you stopped your training and you went back to farm. But then were you back at Lothair for some time before you moved to Clifton? How did the move come to Rosetta?
I'll tell you what happened. All right, 1984. I said to Jenny, hey, it's time I bought a couple of horses. So I got on an aeroplane. I flew down to Robertson, to the Robertson sale, and I bought my first 2 mares in 1984 again. And of course, from there, I called it Clifton Stud, and it's just grown from there, and this is where we are today.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there was Clifton Stud in Lothair, then you decided to move from there to
Not into Rosetta.
Rosetta.
Yeah. That was a hell of a decision. It was a good business and a good investment up there. I mean, I was the third generation. My grandfather moved there in 1913. Sure. And we moved here in 2008. It was just about 100 years. But the time was up. You know, the whole area was being bought by government. And I just knew to, discussed it with Jenny and I thought, well, let's move on. But it had everything, it had beautiful stables, sandstone stables, you know what I mean? If you go there now, they're just standing. And they were all, my father built them about 1933. Beautiful sandstone block in a U like that,
Now, if you take, as you said, it was at the time a difficult decision, etc., and maybe you didn't know what the future would hold, and all that sort of thing. But now, if we just fast forward the clock and look at Clifton now today, there can't be too many regrets, because the way the farmers set up. You talk about a U shape. Your stables there are in a U shape, so you've obviously modelled that design around that. I mean, things are, yes, I'm sure everybody has rocky roads to go along, but now you look back and surely you must think to yourself, we made the right decision.
Well, I think we did. Obviously, one of the problems of being up there was the isolation from other studs. Yet I did get some good support. A chap called David Makins, he supported us. We bought a stallion called Allied Flag. He was a Danzig horse. We were both Danzig mad, and we thought, we looked only for a Danzig stallion. And of course, we bred some very good horses, and that's
Classic
where
Flag
Classic Flag came along, because we bred Classic Flag up at that farm. And unfortunately, we lost him prematurely. He died of a twisted gut when he was about 15, 16. But a lot of guys said, that stallion with more support would have been, and I agree, So
sure.
Anyway, coming down, we used to travel from there to Jenny used to drive a truck and drive horses for me to be covered down at Summerhill sometimes, So she did her part as well. And but anyway, so we come down to this farm. We try to look around the Cape. But things are expensive down there. And at the time, we just couldn't find a property. We tried everywhere within the horsey area. Then we came back and we thought, well, let's look around Nottingham Road. And we saw this farm. Dams already there, house was there, whereas in the Cape they're trying to sell you sort of 20 hectares of
nothing,
grapes hanging like that for 7 and 8 million, you know what I mean. So anyway, we could see there was potential. I saw the potential in this farm, and so we went for it. And that's how it all started.
But it's also nice though that you're much closer to stallions and all that. At least the local stallions. So there's no travelling.
No, of course.
Well, not that much travelling.
Yeah. But talking of dams, you know about the dams at Clifton, don't you?
That's the best part of the whole farm.
But now, did you show Peter that picture of your son? I mean, we couldn't believe it, the size of that trout. But we'll talk about trouts and dams on the farm in a moment. Just to change the subject for a second, I want to ask you to tell us and the viewers about your family. Now, why I say your family, of course, because the good lady of Clifton needs her airtime, but also an interesting family in the sense that Jenny's got a lot of sisters, etc., and you're well related to the Ferraris family. Fill us in on the whole family and your immediate family, your daughters and your kids.
Well, what was hell of an interesting, while we were living at the Vaal in Vereniging, Ormond Ferraris hadn't moved to the Vaal yet. But the next thing we heard, and I didn't know Ormond at all, but through my fellow trainers, that Ormond's now coming to the Vaal. See, so
geez.
They were all a little everyone braced up a bit. And there was quite a bit of apprehension, so I thought, no, hello, this guy must be difficult, because I don't know him from a borrow side, but anyway. He moved in, and when those horses stepped out to be worked every day, and they were ringing around, they were machines. You could see these were proper horses, you know what I mean. Anyway, one day I was working my string of little, scrubbers along, and I felt someone walking towards my ring, I had my ring and that. And I sort of looked and said, but that's Ormond Ferraris. He's coming to my ring. And what am I going to do now? What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? I thought, jeepers, is one of my grooms now done something down there, that...
And you're going to get hauled over the coals.
Anyway, he walks into my ring and puts his hand out. He says, well, I'm Ormond Ferraris. I've been watching you do your horses and I'm very impressed in that. And I have to go away for a couple of weeks. Would you mind looking after my string of horses? And that was my introduction to Ormond Ferraris.
Jeez.
So it was a hell of an honor, really. So I did a week or so with him at his stable before he left, wherever he had to go. And of course, that too, it was a learning experience. So many guys have learned from Ormond Ferraris. It was in that way, I learned a lot too. Everything was just run so regimental, and so nobody was told what to do. They just knew what the routine was.
Yeah.
And amazing. I mean, you'd go from box to box, checking the mangers. When the horses would pull out to go to the track to go and work, and he didn't trust anybody else. He used to go from manger to manger to make sure so that he knew who'd left and how much the horse was eaten. So he went off, and I looked after the string of horses, Andrew. So of course you can imagine I was bloody nervous. We had distinctly who should have won the July.
Should have won the July, yeah.
You're with me. We had Black Bishop who won the Derby in Joburg. Pretty Border was a filly that cleaned up. I don't know if you remember that. She was amazing. Just to name but a few. Anyway, so that was my introduction to Ormond. So he came back, and I gave him when I decided to go back to the farm. I left a horse with him, which he took on and won quite a few more races with it. So that
how's that relationship start?
So I gave him what do you call it, an authority to act. In any case, then one day, Ormond had sent David to Cape Town with a string. And at that stage, I'd influenced Jenny's sister Pam into the horse business. Well, she grew up, she used to come to the old farm and she was just farm mad and horse mad. And then she was a nurse and she'd done her dash. I said to her,
yeah, I met her at Gray's.
Did you?
Yes. Pam, yes, yeah, I was going out with Serena Belsham at the time. I think Pam's good friend. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's a small world, I didn't know that. Anyway, so Pam eventually was riding work in Cape Town. She was nursing at night, doing night duty, and then she'd go and ride work at Milnerton for Paddy Crayo, funny enough. And Paddy was the guy getting winners every week at that stage. And so David comes down with a string to Milnerton, and he spots the girl with the pink cap, but he never met her there, but he saw this cap and he was quite interested, you see. So funny enough, Jenny and I were in Joburg with Pam 8 months later, and we had to go to the jockey club. So I said, well, let's go and see old Ormond. And I didn't think of David, I was thinking more of Ormond, because Ormond, so Pam blames me today. So I took we went out there, and of course Ormond had already gone home, so it was late. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. The trainer had left already, but David was still around. He was still a piggin in there. He was the assistant, So of course, this is Pam Cook, who wasn't David. Introduced them. He says, "Aren't you the girl with the pink cap from Cape Town?"
So he remembered. He picked her up.
So that was the start.
That was the start.
Of Pam and David, yeah.
And that's how they've met. I mean,
that's how they met. Yeah.
And of course, well, the rest is history, because it was Pam and David are married, and they've since sired 2 beautiful children, and Luke.
Yes,
he's just unbelievable, and Caroline, and
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And how's that for a story?
Not bad. But Jenny, your other sister, was the big Numzan in Nottingham Road. Moira.
Jenny's got how many sisters?
A hell of a lot. I've heard them. But anyway,
so Moira's based in Cape Town. Oh no, Moira's based in Nottingham Road.
Yeah, she's the lawyer. Not the lawyer. She's the politician.
Yeah, the DA is trying to get them all sorted out.
Yeah. And the oldest one lives in Joburg. Has always lived up there. Yeah, and then Jenny's is number 2. Moira 3, is it?
Cape
Lindy,
Town,
no,
Lindy.
Lindy lives in Cape Town. She's married to a doctor, and then of course Pam. Pam's
I'll
the
never
lady.
forget the greatest lovely story when we were down at the Met. They've heard it 100 times, but we met Lindy and what is Malcolm. That's right, Lindy and Malcolm. We were invited to their home to go and have a braai. Luke invited us, and he was obviously riding in the Met. He had light weights, etc. And we said to Luke, "Well, eat." He said, "No, I can't. I'm on diet. I've got to eat salad." And of course, Dr. Malcolm popped up. He said, "Everybody in this damn house is on diet and have to eat damn salads, So yeah, but that's okay. But just tell us, but how many kids have you got? Let's talk about.
We've got two daughters.
Okay.
And one, Brenda, she's married and lives in Joburg. She went off to London for 10 years. Her husband joined her over there, and but his father had a business in Joburg that the father was saying to John G, "You must come back this business. You've got to take it over and run it."
Okay.
So it's called industrial netting. So yeah, that's where they are today, and so they've got two kids, and growing up. And then the other one is Sharon. She lives here at
Hillcrest.
Winston Park, Hillcrest.
Okay.
Yeah, Hillcrest, Winston Park, whatever you want to call it.
So Pete, you've got a lot of ladies in your life.
They're all ladies.
All ladies,
I
eh?
tell you what, it's bloody ladies. But anyway, my kids have been good to me.
Your daughter here in Winston Park, what does she do? Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Well, she does many things. She's she's quite good at computers, and she does people's books, and she teaches people all the packages on computers. So you could phone her up and say, "Listen, help me, I've got this problem," and she'll come to your home and give you lessons and things like that. So she's a jack of all trades. She helps us with our books at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
The farm now, let's just quickly talk, and I say quickly, not quickly.
Leave my hat alone. What's that, man?
Look at your funny hat, eh? Have you got one of these? Have you got an Eden Rock hat?
You should have, eh?
You should have, but nevertheless, he won't swap, so that's fine. But let's talk about the farm a little bit, because I say quickly, but not quickly, because we've got time, but we also haven't got all day, which is sad, because you've got such a wonderful story to tell. I want to talk about the staff and your assistants and your stallion manager, etc. Just now, but at the moment you're having a purple patch. I mean, there's winner after winner every time you open the book. It's a bred by Clifton, and of course Velvet Glove, who's produced Mrs. Geriatrics, and you've had your well, it was then probably the Rothmans Durban July. It's since been the Vodacom, the Hollywood, but you've won the July with Classic Flag, which maybe took a little bit of time, and then you took some time to win your first Group 1. You've had hundreds of winners, but yeah, the farm is just producing stats and results phenomenally at the moment, and you must be really chuffed and really proud.
Thanks, Warren. Never enough, though. You cannot get enough winners. It's one of those things that you're never enough. But anyway, yeah, I think you've got to be lucky. I've just spent my whole life from those two mares I bought back then to now is to try and upgrade in my little way. Of course, I think I can read a pedigree. You after all these years, you've been following it long enough. I don't think I've missed a racing result since I was at school, 1965. So I'll say that as a fact. Jenny will vouch for me that I haven't missed a racing result. So I might not read it today. I'll read it 5 days later, but I follow the game. So and that's how you buy mares. Is that you see this family and you throw it up on the computer and you say, "Wow, I would love to get into that family," and we try and get in.
Please share the story to intervene again. Share the story about Jenny, who was a TV at home on channel 240, who she thought the TV was broken.
Yeah, this is back in the old farm at Blyth and Andrew. So of course in Ermelo we've got a mate of ours who did our TV. John Hay was his name, or John.
It's a great story.
And he loved horses. He was punting every bloody meeting. Any case, so he was out on the farm for a braai or something on a Sunday, and obviously made sure the TV was going. And that. So Jenny says to him, "John, I've got a problem with the TV. What's wrong?" He says, "This channel won't change from 240." Yes, I change it to another channel. It just jumps back to 240. So he stops and he thinks, and he didn't realize what she was talking about. But of course, she's meaning the stallion. You know, you can't get this thing off 240. You know what I mean?
Great story, and it's the same in my house.
Yeah.
So, and I get hauled over the calls all the time by the kids that all that CS racing. Well, you know, what do you want us to watch? The chess game or the netball game? You know.
Exactly.
But anyway, that's a great
I've given
story.
her another channel, man. I mean, there's one in the next round, so she can do what she likes.
But sorry, so going back to the stats and Mrs. Geriatrics and Velvet Glove, and I mean, to watch a horse being covered, you know, watch the mare being covered, to being born, to raising, selling, to winning a Group 1.
Well, I've been fortunate enough, Andrew, in that I have planned the mating. I've taken the mare to the stallion, supervised the cover. I've scanned her because I do my own scanning and that, and I've been doing it for 25 odd years. Scanning the mare in foal and foaling the foal down, raising it, breaking it in, putting a saddle on its back, working it at the track, and leading it in on the race course. So I don't know how many guys have done that, but I've done that a good 10 or 15 times in my life. So yeah, it's you know, that's an absolute thrill, of course. Yeah, so I'm just saying to you that you up your game the whole time. You're trying to up your game, and then oh yes, I must tell you, Vogue, the mare, that fell in my lap. Well, it didn't really fall in my lap, but it was I bought 25 odd horses off a guy who owned Vogue because he wanted to get out and he kept his horses with me, and half of them were rubbish anyway. So he was going to go to a sale and not get any bids. But there was this plum, and I knew if the plum went into the sale ring, it was gone. I'd never be able to afford to buy it. So I went to him and offered a deal. I said, listen, man, how much do you want for all your horses? So I ended up buying the whole bloody string just to get Vogue. But there were a couple of others that were worth having, you know. So Vogue did me a big favor because I sent it to Fort Worth, and I managed to sell a foal out of her for 2.2 million. That was unbelievable.
So Vogue, and then Vogue was Vogue, then Velvet Glove. I mean, that's the whole family.
So Velvet Glove. You know, so I've tried to keep the family, the fillies. So I sent our Velvet Glove into training. She was trained by Corrine, and of course, unfortunately, the horse couldn't run a drum. And she came home sort of having 7-8 runs, no place. What do I do? But she's a daughter of Vogue. And I think that was the influence for me to cover it. So she had, I think her first foal was placed, and then the second one was this Mrs. Geriatrics.
How did Miss Geriatrics get her name?
You better Google it.
It sounds like me. Geriatric.
Yeah, come on. She also first Geriatrics rhymes with Getrix.
Yeah,
so that sounded quite good. And Mrs. Geriatrics is, you must Google it. You'll see.
I will.
And she was one of the pretty ladies in the village, and you know, she was Mrs. Geriatrics. So I'll say no more. You Google it.
But also too, there was a horse that ran yesterday, which was also clever because King of the Gaul, which you insulted me for tipping, but King of the, you watch it next time. But King of the Gaul is by Verse and Getrix, you know, and King of the Gauls was Asterix and Verse and Getrix, all to do with that whole setup. But so Mrs. Geriatrics, so that was your first Group 1 win, her first Group 1 win. I mean, where did you?
Okay, obviously, Fort Vogue, the Vogue wood I sold way back.
Oh yes, okay, yes.
I sold him to the Basses, and of course they won, you know, some nice races with him. But he wasn't a Group 1 winner. I think he won 2 Group 2s. He ran 4th in the Met. He was a good horse. He won about 6 races. Unfortunately, he was sold and went off to Dubai, and he died before he ran there. He didn't ever run. So it was sad. It would have been nice to see him perform over there. Obviously, Classic Flag was my first Group 1 winner, and he won a couple of Group 1 races. And you know, Classic Flag, while we're on him, I wanted to say this. He won the July, he ran 2nd the next year, and the year after he ran 4th. So I mean, it's quite a good achievement, you know.
But Danzig was a big influence in those days. I remember there was Key Danzig that we had here, and I know those Danzig mares were pretty
Andrew
sought after.
Danzig and Allied Flag, we came down to those two stallions, funny enough, Makins and myself. And we decided on Allied Flag. So Key Danzig ended up with Alan King down here. So, so then, yes, coming back to the Group 1, we won the July, and that year he was Horse of the Year in South Africa, and that was 98. So, of course, we've come right to 2023 for the next Group 1 one. That's 25 making years, it's a long time, So it's very rewarding, You feel very good about it. Yeah.
You were at the races, weren't you?
Oh yeah.
For the first Group 1, you were at the race. Sadly, I don't know where I was. Missed it.
Weren't you there? I thought you were there. No.
I don't think so. No. I remember
You must have been there. Right?
No, I didn't race that day. But nevertheless, we certainly celebrated. And yeah, it's Peter. You talk about some stallions. You've also had a couple of stallions stand on the farm. At the moment, there's Eden Rock, as you can see. But Eden Rock, we'll talk about him in a moment. But just you've had a few stallions on the farm, and especially my favourite one.
Yeah, of course. When we arrived there, I saw this pedigree, and it was a pedigree to die for, ate the answer. If you looked at that, he was by Danzig, so of course that was a big influence. But just check his female line, check everything. You couldn't fault that pedigree, And he wasn't expensive, put him together. He got some winners in that, but he wasn't the success we'd love him to have been. You know what I mean? Who else did we have?
Well, there's Mambo. I know we were jumping around.
Yeah, Mambo came. Well, I was in the Cape, and Benny Marais. I saw this horse, and I thought I've always liked him. He's had a pedigree that I liked, very similar to Al Mufti, and I thought, sure. Said to him, that horse better come to me as a joke, And he said, you want him? I said, yeah, I'll have him. So anyway, that's how it all started. So Mambo ended up with me. He was a character.
Well, I say the best, one of my favourite stallions, because the best horse I've ever had a share in was by Mambo in Seattle. So yeah, he's always have a soft spot in my heart.
Yes. No, another stallion I stood also at this farm was Westman, if you remember him. Yes. He was at Highlands, and he was by Gone West, similar to Western Winter. They're both by Gone West. So yeah, he was a fun horse. We had some fun. We got some winners. We got winners from Mambo. So yeah. Now I was asked to take on Last Winter, also a Western Winter horse, out of he's out of a Silvano mare, and I mean he was a 3.7 million yearling at a Cape sale.
Sure.
So to say no more, the looks are there.
The looks are there. The blood's
and of
there,
course he's a
everything's
stunning looking horse, and he stood 2 years with Warwick before me, and so I got him in his third season. He deserves bigger books than what he gets, but sure.
So, but now you're sweating now, third season.
Yeah, we're into the fourth now.
Yeah.
We're going into our fourth season now.
He'll be all right. Let me tell you, he's produced the horses to come through sales and horses on farms. It's magnificent last winters, I can tell you. Then Eden Rock. Let's talk about Eden Rock. Because this is an interesting concept. This stallion is owned, correct me if I'm wrong, by the KZN Breeders Club in its entirety. Is that right?
Correct. And it's a first. You won't see this anywhere. And I think it's just full credit to all the guys involved, and that's the KZN Breeders. We've shrunk a lot because some of the big names aren't there anymore. So I think that everyone's working well together in Natal right now, and so the money was there, and Bruce and I were sent up to Randkiesfontein. We drove up to go and see Eden Rock, and we liked what we saw, and we came back, reported to them, to the other guys, and of course, so the KZN Breeders Club are the owners of Eden Rock. But he stands with me. They said, would you stand him? I said, yes, I would stand him. Listen, and the marvellous thing is his brother that's just come
Can you believe it?
Oh,
Sandringham Summit.
Sandringham Summit. I mean,
that is a racehorse.
He's done him a huge favour too.
Yeah.
But it's funny with Sean Terry when he sent Pomodoro, Skizzle, that other horse that Died. I mean, they were not, you wouldn't say they were top pedigrees anyway, but they produced winners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's definitely got a...
No, listen, I think that you must remember Neil and Lith Orford. I knew them from the Transvaal because I was on boards with them there. And Lith used to spend her life just studying pedigrees. And of course, let me tell you something, Skizzle would have something in there. She wouldn't stand it if she didn't think there was something in there.
I mean, from limited mares, I mean, he got
absolutely.
some nice winners.
You know, they had a stallion called Hobnob before. Yes, do you remember Hobnob?
Gaia.
Anyway, he was, he was their first, and that made them. You know, and of course, you know, they weren't fools. Neil's a vet too.
Yes,
you know? Great people.
Peter, along the way, you've had built some lovely relationships with lots of people in racing, but in particular trainers. And why I say trainers, because you know, and the human makeup is like that. You make relationships with many people, but certain are stronger than others. It's just the way humans are made.
Leave it.
Two trainers I would like to touch on, Diane Stenger and Corinne Bestel, who sadly doesn't train anymore. But you and your family have always had a good relationship and a good working relationship with them, amongst other trainers.
Well, with Corinne, I had a foal born up there who had shocking legs and pigeon-toed badly and both knees offset. And of course, she, when I saw these legs, I said, well, you know, don't send them to a Joburg track because this needs the beach. These legs aren't going to stand up. And I didn't own it initially. The owner, kept saying to this guy, just give this horse time. He's got a top line to die with, but these legs are bad. But if you look after this horse, it'll, and he eventually just couldn't take it any longer. He said, so I said to him, man, if you don't want the damn horse, I'll take it. You know what I mean? Sort of trying to persuade him that if I'll take it, then there must be a chance.
Chance.
So anyway, I ended up with the horse. I didn't put a saddle on his back as a 2-year-old. And as a 3-year-old, I thought now she's mature enough to be broken in. And I thought, well, where do I send her? Cape Town's far, PE's a long way away, Durban. I thought Summerveld here too might be a bit hard on the legs. I want this on the beach, and Clearwood was the obvious place. And then I thought, you know what? You want a lady trainer for this horse too, because with all due respect to the ladies, they do a pretty good job. And I didn't know Corinne from a bar or so. And I contacted her, and I sent her down there. What was her name, Jen? Olympic Flag. Her name was Olympic Flag. So of course, Olympic Flag went to Corinne, and of course she was just perfect with the horse. I mean, she bandaged his legs every day. And I've got a picture at home of her winning first time out. I think she was cantering down, you know. She just won on it like that. And then she went on. She won a listed race and a Group 3, I think. But she retired 6-time winner, and the legs were never a problem. Never a problem.
Amazing, isn't that amazing?
And I sent her down, I sent her to the Cape straight from Corinne, and unfortunately she couldn't fall, came back, had a badly twisted gut, and I lost the mare. Well,
that's we talk about, now that you just mentioned that, and that's why when Jenny asked us, how do we structure our podcast, and we can't really because we jump around, and now you've just mentioned that, and one of the points I wanted to raise is, in any part of the industry, is such high highs and such low lows. How do you handle those?
You just got to. I mean, breeding, I tell you what, I've owned them, I've trained them, and now I breed them. Give me the others. Breeding's the hardest and the worst. It's such a long road ahead, you know. So, and you have these setbacks. I mean, let's talk about abortion. You work so darn hard at getting these mares in foal. You send them to the Cape, you get them in foal, they come back, they're blooming, they're just blossoming. And come June, July, those are your dangerous months. You're scared to go and feed because you don't want to go and see what could have happened overnight.
Yes.
But now all of a sudden, he has this package on the ground. You know what I mean? And you see the blood stain obviously from the mare, so you know who it is. But the mare's just grazing. She's just grazing around there, and here's this package just lying. She's not rolling with sick as a dog or something to have caused that abortion. She's just dropped it. And that's maddening. You know, the expense of getting that far. Now you've got to start again. And 1 year works leads into the other, you know. So, but that's part of the game. If you can't take it, you must bail. But that's passion.
Yes,
you know,
of course.
It's passion. And we all passionate, all bloody fools. I think Peter.
And then of course, Pete, the highs will you celebrate and you enjoy, and that's just a happy time. But it's tough. It is tough. You know, that
I just want to mention something going back to trainers. I like to support the guys that support me. I try to in my small way. You know, Corrine supported me a lot. I had horses trainers come to my sales, buy horses from me. So, you know, I've had a horse with Michael Roberts because he supported me so well. And I've like tried to keep a leg in the yard so that I am contributing to the yard. Currently, I've got Petit Verdot with Garth. He bought a lot of horses from me, you know what I mean? Absolutely. And I've just sent a horse or two up to Roy Magna because he's bought over just about $1 million rands worth of horses from me, and I appreciate it so much. So I've got to try and put something back, you know.
Absolutely.
So it's not that I'm trying to favour one over the other. It's just these guys have been good to me, you know. And I think that one hand.
Yeah, good point. Good point. It's not a case of favouring. It's just as you say, you just gel with certain people, and you try and give back to what you receive.
Warren, if I could afford to race every filly I own, I'd race the lot.
Yeah.
You know, then I could take 2 to that person, 3 there,
absolutely,
2, 4, you know what I mean?
You could tell them how to train them too.
But sales, you've had good, I mean, you get some times where you have bad sales, average sales, but recently you've been blessed, and a lot of the farms countrywide, you know, have had good sales, but in particular we're talking about Clifton now because it's your show. Good sales recently. You must have been chuffed. Naturally, you may have, you know, 1 or 2 maybe a little let down, but in general, I think good results.
Absolutely.
But
there's definitely there's a breath of fresh air around the whole industry. Perhaps it's the shrinkage, and you know, there's not that much stock around. But I think it's you know, everything's on the up.
Yeah.
Look what's happened to Cape Town. We've got to thank Greg Bortz here too, and also what they've done in Joburg. So. Let's just hope it all can
lift up a little bit.
But I'm confident it will.
And hopefully this EU thing goes through as well.
Exactly.
So which should
looks
also
like we're halfway,
boost the industry.
Are we halfway?
I hope so.
But also, too, as you say, there's been a lot of investment. You know, you mentioned Greg Bortz, of course, Hollywood and Full Racing, as you say. Everyone's pumped in, which is good. And as they're pumping in, let's hope we can pump up. But you've also brought a good quality specimen to the last couple of sales too, which helps, you know.
Well, it comes with upgrading and all that, you know. We're trying to, I'm trying my best, you know, and I'm trying to send some mares out all the time to the Cape. So that also helps. I think, you know, your presentation counts a lot at the sales. So we try and present our horses as well as we can. I've got Christine Quinn. I must mention Christine. She, when I arrived at this farm, Dr. Alan Beshard, who's the vet around the Midlands, he said to me, "Would I be looking for someone to help to work for me?" And I said, "Yes, I would." He said, "Can I recommend her?" And Christine's been there since 2008 right now to the day, and she's learned a lot from me, I think. I hope she has. You know, I've imparted as much as I.
Work her bloody hard.
No, I've imparted quite a lot of the little bit I do know onto her. I try and, you know, so she knows exactly what I'm looking for, and she's picked it up and she's taking it further. So we're very proud of Christine.
And France, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I wouldn't say.
Okay, you happy?
Yeah,
France, I know it's been a long one, but we're in the home straight now. We're in the last 200 meters. France is your stallion man now. He's also a horseman of the highest order.
Wonderful guy. Now, he was always at Scott Brothers. He looked after Crusade and Stallions prior to that. He was there with John Slade when John Slade used to work there.
Jeepers, that's a long time.
Yeah, I omitted to say, but Jenny's sister Pam worked at Scott's under John Slade for a while. I think Francis was a stallion man then, and he must have been a lot younger then. And when when Scott's sold up, the next thing he knocked on our door, and we welcomed him. I mean, he's just a very, very nice man. He's such a gentleman, and such a nice a person to start with. But his handling of the Stallions, he's so proud of his Stallions, and you don't have to tell him anything. He just gets out there, and when mares come in to be covered from outside, he cleans that stallion up so he's in choke-like condition every time. Wonderful person.
You must have met Franz. Have you met Franz? No. Stop fishing only. There's also horses on the farm, not only fish. So go and meet Franz. And
olive woolly bugger with the orange bead.
Now I want Jenny to come in because we're about to close up. And Jenny's not a happy chap because we're forcing her into a situation. I want you to go and stay next to your husband. And of course, Jenny, part of that is Clifton Stud. I mean, there is Clifton Stud.
No, Christine's missing.
Christine, yes, but of course, couldn't bring her. Somebody had to do some work. So, how many years have you been married?
50. Exactly.
50 years.
On the 3rd of February, 2023. 50 years.
50 years. Okay.
73.
And of course,
this year.
We're married in 73.
We talk about France, we talk about all your quality grooms, we talk about Christine, we talk about everybody, we talk about you, but the farm couldn't function without this good lady.
I'll tell you something. That's every person we've employed over the years comes in green, and because we've always been isolated, you've got to do everything yourself. So we do like Caslicks. Let's just talk Caslicks. That's stitching up the back of the mare. Who do you think teaches the person to do the first Caslick? Here. I can't do it with one hand. I know how to do it up here, but I can't do it.
Sure.
Here's my right hand man. She teaches everything. So Christine today does a Caslick in her sleep, but thanks to this lady, and the people before her. So I want to just tell you too about my staff. When I left my Lothair farm, we decided not to really employ or try and take people with us, because we just felt, it's not going to work in another environment. So the next thing we down here, and of course then the phone rings, and today we must have how many, Jen? 5 or 6 people from our old farm. They
come and join you?
They're part of our team still. So they've, they must have enjoyed us to have come all this way, and they've, they had a tremendous disadvantage. All their 5 families are all the way back near Swatini, Swaziland, and they call it today, and they catch 5 or 6 taxis to get there, and 5 or 6 taxis back again to get to work. We give them, they work 6 weeks, and they go for about 5 days, a week.
8 weeks.
Yeah, is it 8 weeks? 8 weeks, they work 8 weeks and then they go off. But she's in charge of them. She's fantastic, thanks. And I'm proud of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
They really are good people.
Well, Jen, we look forward to having some breakfast with you. You can go out of camera shot now. I know you don't like all that camera being on you, but we have to introduce you. Last thing to touch on before we wrap up. You also have a good quality and a big band of owners or clients that trainers have owners, I suppose you could call them clients, that support your stable, your farm. You've got them that board their mares, that work with you, breed with you. You've also had a good quality band of clients, which helps.
Well, they become friends. They're not just clients. David Makins was with us how long, Jen? 20 odd years. And we were friends. We ended up friends with him, and it was wonderful. His wife, he had the most wonderful wife, Mata. She was Swedish, and she's so we've had them, and then we've ended up with a guy like Eric Boer, Peter White. Peter White didn't.
He was from Lothair area too, wasn't he?
Well, he mined up there. You see, he worked for Graham Beck around Ermla and sort of towards the Witbank. So all the mines up there, and then, of course Graham Beck. Our famous Graham Beck. That's who made all his money. It was in the Ermla district, which is our district really. And Peter White worked for him and grew up there. Another guy in racing was Malcolm Wishart, if you remember Malcolm Wishart.
Yes. It also with Dennis Dreyer.
Yeah, he was with Dennis Dreyer. He also ended up he started off working for Beck, and then of course went on his own with Peter White. So yeah, Peter White then grew up there, then he ended up in Joburg in the end. You know, sort of, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've had some good people, we really have. Thank you. Eric Boer, still with us. Been with us how long, Jen?
Since we moved here.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Okay, we'd love to sit and talk, but you've got chores to do, and I don't know, the way Andrew's dressed, I don't know if he's got work to do, or if he's going to the beach, or he's going to, I don't know, are you going to play golf today?
Golf on my shoulder.
But it's been lovely to be with you and Jenny, and to you and your family and your entire team, and to every breeder in KZN, and to every breeder in South Africa. Just all the best. It's a tough industry, and yeah, thank God we've got the love and the passion and the drive, as you said, to keep everybody fueled and going. But it's been lovely, Pete, to chat to you and Jenny and learn about your team and your family and the good times and the bad times. And we, as I said, could go on for longer, but we just haven't got the time. But well done, and thank you, and also for making everybody in the media and everyone that wishes to go to Clifton so welcome. Because it is a lovely part of the world, and it's any other breeders that have got such interesting stories, come and tell them to us. But thank you to you and your team.
Thank you. We're a phone call away. Anybody wants to come and visit Clifton, just phone us. And very welcome. I want to thank you for honouring us to be here today. Thank you.
That's a pleasure, Peter. Oh, thank you
The
very
food's good, the wine's good, the fishing's good, and the horses are good. What more do we want? That's a wrap from all of us. Peter and Jenny Blyth, and of course the entire team that Peter and Jenny have touched on. Thanks to them. Race well, breed well, punt well, and as always, just remain humble and be nice. And we will see you as always in the number 1 box. Thank you for watching this week's episode of In the Box Seat podcast right until the very end. And we hope that you enjoyed it, because we certainly did. If you missed last week's podcast, In the Box Seat podcast with Andrew and myself, please go and watch it here. And last week's episode will be right there for you to go and enjoy and watch, as we know you will certainly enjoy In the Box Seat podcast from last week.